We will open the Senate Minerals Committee meeting. It's going to be kind of a short meeting because we start back up at 1 o'clock. So we, on last meeting, we were discussing Senate File 47, and I cut off the public comment. And so we're still on public comment on this. Doesn't that make Parfit look like that?
It does. I bet, yeah. Good point.
Got a thing behind your head there, Director Parfit, makes you kind of look like a space guy or something. Anyway, so we're still on public comment. Any public comment? We have one on the Zoom, but I want to do the room first and then Zoom. So anyone in the room that has not spoken that would like to? Anyone? None? All right, then we have one on the Zoom, I believe. Is that Mr. Snaki that wants to speak on Senate File 47?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I'm bringing him over right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I didn't. Before you get him started, we should probably do the roll since we can all say aye now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Beitman.
Here.
Senator Cooper.
Here.
Senator Rothfuss.
Here.
Senator Wasserberger.
Here.
And Chairman Anderson,
Here.
all present.
Mr. Snaki, go ahead.
No, we testified last time. We're for the bill and with Denbury, and we're thank you for your help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the public comment? Nope. All right, Senate File 47, we will close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Cooper, second by Wasserberger. Any discussion? Any change you'd like to make? I will go by it page by page if you want.
I don't even need this time.
There was a
Oh, possibility.
20, yeah, 20 years there.
I'm fine with 20, I'm fine with 10.
Yeah.
You can shoot it if you want. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
where was it? There it is. Mr. Chairman, just to see if the committee wants to do this, page 3, line 17. Right now, the certificate of completion requires that 10 years have passed after the carbon dioxide injections, and in all probability, it'll be longer than that, but that is a number that we could change, and I don't think there's any magic to it. So I will just move to amend that to 20 years after carbon dioxide injections end so that we can have that discussion. I see if there's a second. Anyone interested in moving that to 20 years?
Is there a second?
I'll second it for purposes.
Moved and seconded for change in page 3, line 17 from 10 years to 20 years. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that it's definitely more realistic. I don't know that it's essential, but I can't imagine that the process that will be used where you've got a requirement with modeling and with monitoring wells that you basically prove out that the zone is stable. I don't know how that would happen in less than 10 years after carbon dioxide injections. If it would make people feel better that it be 20, I don't think we're in danger of ever taking too long as a result of that. So it's rational. At the same time, I don't know that I'm particularly worried about the 10 years. So I'll support the 20 years. I don't know that it's going to be a major difference in how it actually plays out.
Other discussion? Hearing none, I think we can just voice vote
Voice
this,
vote on
can't we?
it. Yep.
Okay, so the amendment is on page 3, line 17, to take it from 10 years to 20 years. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That amendment carries. Are there any other amendments that anyone wants to propose? Yes.
And I don't have any more amendments that I want to propose, but I do believe this is going to be a continued work in progress, and that it's okay that it be a work in progress, because we're going to have to learn, revisit, and iterate through this over the next few years. But as we know, based on particularly that amendment that we just passed, it's going to be 20 years before we would be certifying anything. And I just want to, I guess, put the public on notice also that this needs to be worked, that we need to contemplate, we need to revise and refine to ensure that we've got appropriate liability protections in place, that we've got appropriate testing and monitoring in place, and that we have confidence. And also, we had a good discussion the other day about contemplating circumstances where you have a potential producing zone below an isolated zone that we are going to need solutions on. There's going to have to be amendments, I think, to this that provides that clarity. So I'm going to support this moving it forward because I want to get it on the books and I want to begin this process. But I would just like to state, certainly in my belief, that it's a sound beginning to an important process and not the end of that process.
Other comments? Other comments? Sensing you're ready to vote, please call a roll call on Senate File 47.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 47 as amended, Senator Beitman,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
and Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 in favor of do pass amended.
It squeaked by. Who wants to take this on the floor?
I can do it unless someone else wants to. That answers-
Rothfuss will take it on the floor. And I won't be in the chair this time, so I'll be able to tell you.
My little one.
Next, bill to come before you is Senate File 84, mineral royalties, proportional severance tax relief. Yes.
Before
Senator
we,
Rothfuss.
before we get to that, I think in the interest of the people's time here, which 2 bills or so should we just cut loose? For example, the deregulated industrial power zone, I think is going to have enough discussion that there's absolutely no way it's going to happen today. And I think we've got some people that are probably here just for that. And then we've got several more bills afterwards. The lottery bill is quick. I see we've got the right people for the Dow bill. I wouldn't expect that to be too terribly long. Insurance sandbox is long. So I guess I'd just recommend if anybody wants to be free, that we announce that we're going to kick insurance sandbox and deregulated industrial power zones to next time, unless you want to get to those today.
Now, which ones are you doing? The
We've only got
Insurance
24 more
sandbox.
minutes. Yeah, I
and
would,
the decentralized, right? Decentralized.
today, no, I would definitely just say that we're not doing the insurance
Right, right,
sandbox
right.
and we're not doing the deregulated industrial power zones today. There's no way we can get to those. Is that fair?
We'll
know how
only,
many we'll get
we'll
to.
only get to about one more bill, so I don't think we need to prioritize them, but yes, I agree.
Do you want to just announce that we're doing that one and let everyone else go then?
Which one
This
is
is
it?
the one that's up now with Senator Boner.
No, this one's up.
I'm sorry. You're right. I held
84
up, I
is
held
up.
up the wrong one.
Yes, you held up the wrong one.
I sure did.
Yeah, we're doing Senate File 84. I doubt we'll get to the others,
Perfect. Thanks.
just because we're running through time here pretty bad. Thank you. See you on Monday.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone knows, we're going back in at 1 o'clock, not 2 o'clock. That's the reason why this is.
So let's go mineral royalties, proportional severance, tax relief. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be here. Maybe the committee will remember similar bill last year that attempted to achieve the.
I can't hear you.
Perhaps the committee will remember a similar bill that wasn't quite ready last year. This has been worked by your Select Federal Natural Resource Management Committee with lots of good input from the Department of Revenue. I think we have a workable bill that we can present to the floor with one proposed amendment. It's a policy decision. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that would anticipate the increase in the federal royalty rate for oil, gas, and coal. Not going to get into the merits of that discussion right now, given the time constraints. But the concern is just how disruptive that will be to our revenue streams. You can count on an increase to FMRs and actually a decrease when you increase the royalty rate, you decrease severance taxes and ad valorem taxes. And so what this bill does is it tries to answer the question, what do we do with those extra FMRs coming in? And what we say is that we want to provide stability, not just for state and local government, but for our oil, gas, and coal companies. And so the objective would be to take the state's portion of that increase. Keep in mind, we get 49% of those FMRs. We're going to realize that more likely than not, an increase in FMRs, what we're saying is that we should use the majority of those increased funds to provide a refund for our oil, gas, and coal companies and provide some stability to those industries. So that's what the bill does. And so I can just go through the bill, Mr. Chairman, if you don't have any questions. And just to reiterate, this is not reducing the amount of taxes being paid in the state. It's still going to go up. It's just not going to go up as much. And we're providing an even keel to state and local government when that royalty rate increases. So going through the bill, on page 2, that's sort of the balancer, if you will, saying that based off of, and I should probably back up. This is probably the worst place to start is at the beginning of the bill. So I'll come back to that later. So going on to page 3, because that's really the meat of the bill. Starting on January 1st, 2023, we're going to give the opportunity for a refund. Now, these companies still have to apply for the refund. They're going to do the administrative work. Obviously, it'll still be audited as they are already audited when it comes to their severance taxes. It still is based off their severance taxes, even though it's ultimately refunded from the FMR, and there's an important reason for that as I get through the bill. But just some important concepts as you go to the bottom of page 3. We just put a stipulation there says that we're going to take the increased based off of the current, say in the case of oil and gas, 12.5%. The speculation is going to be more like 18.75%. So that 6.25% difference, we're going to take that and multiply it by whatever our state share happens to be. We didn't put a hard and fast number in there because that could change, so it remains flexible. And then importantly, we take that number and multiply it by 0.75. So we reduce it basically by 25%. That recognizes the fact that these companies will be paying less ad valorem, less severance tax. When you increase the royalty rate, that's an expense which is deducted from those taxes. And so we're and the Department of Revenue could come up with how they came up with that numbers, but they basically just took the average of ad valorem, so mill levies, and average of severance tax, and that's the numbers they came up with. They felt that was much easier to administer than going through and recognizing every last mill levy and every last, the 600 tax districts that are in the state. So that's why you see that reduction of that portion. And that also means that we still have that 25% that's going to remain in the FMR account that's going to realize that increase still as the bill stands. Moving on, there's also another side board, and that it will never be more than their constitutional 1.5% severance tax. So there's a side board there. They're still going to be paying that, even though this is, technically they're still paying and asking for a refund. We felt that is important to ensure that they're never going to get more of a refund that would cancel out that 1.5% severance tax that has to go to the permanent mineral trust fund. Then once you get into 39-14-209, that's basically the same. So that all those pages up to that point were for oil and gas, or for coal. The rest is the exact same language for oil and gas. And then at the very end, you have 39-14-801. So paragraph J requires separate accounting, so they can report to the Revenue Committee just how much of these refunds the state is realizing. So once again, effective, or it'll go into effect January 1st, 2023. There's a remaining question of that remaining 25% of the state's share of the increase. What do we do with that? And there's an amendment that would at least take half of that remaining amount. So roughly, if you look at in terms of the overall amount of the state share of the increase, that remaining 12.5%, that would make the severance tax account whole. to account for the reduction in severance taxes. We tried to do something for ad valorem, but it's just too complicated with over 600 different tax districts. There's going to be requiring more significant effort to make those mostly local governments whole as they realize a decrease in their tax base as a result of the increase in the federal royalty rate. So that's the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and that's the bill. So I'll pause there for any questions.
So you did go through the amendment in that?
Yeah, we can go over in detail if you'd like. The amendment is simply adding mostly to page 2, that part where we transfer, and I should probably go over that too, go back to the beginning. This is the part where we even out so we have realize an increase in the federal mineral royalties. And this is the part where we transfer the funds from the FMR account to the severance tax income account to even out the effect amongst our revenue streams, which of course have slightly different constituencies and have been carefully negotiated by this legislature. We just are making sure that we don't upset that balance by a federal policy that we didn't have any input in. And so, yeah, the proposal would be to move an additional amount from that FMR account in the amendment to the severance of tax account to account for the drop in severance of taxes.
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we don't have in front of us kind of any of the numbers. I do believe that I understand the concept, and I do understand that the rate is uncertain. So giving exact numbers is going to be a challenge. And then I also further understand all of the complexities that the fiscal note talks about, because we've got our spaghetti forest of flows of funding. But it would be useful, I think, to understand what the estimated significance of this would be if, for example, it did go to 18%. Did you see that analysis? Did you get those spreadsheets?
We did have a handout from the Department of Revenue based off of kind of a nominal, 1 million barrels of oil, increasing the rate from, I think it's 12.5 to 20%. That they do have those numbers, so you can get on a pretty decent idea of per million barrels of oil, at $65 a barrel. And I want to, they could hopefully come provide those numbers. I want to say it's about 1.4 million or so for every $1 million. Excuse me, every million barrels at $65 a barrel. But yes, we do have that analysis.
And I assume they're going to testify, so I can ask that. Okay, that's fine. Then I'll hold off on that question until then. Mr. Chairman, the other question was the challenge associated with ad valorem and distribution of funds, where and for those that aren't as familiar, some funds go into the common school permanent land and the school foundation side of things, others go into the general fund. And with or without this legislation, a change to the federal mineral royalty rate is going to kind of change those flows. And Senator Kolb is he's sneaking around, he's scaring people. That's what we've got going on over there on the right. I know. He didn't appear even remotely sneaky to me. Was there discussion about ways to try to balance the flow between those that would be going to general fund, those that would be going state and local and county, and then those that would be going to the common school fund? I do understand that special districts are a disastrous nightmare, but just in terms of the high level schools versus general fund.
Let me give you just a minute to think about that. It's tradition that if there's a representative or a senator in the room, we introduce them. So I need to introduce Senator Kolb.
That
Senator
is
Kolb,
Senator
thank you for
Kolb.
being here with us.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yep.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so high
All right.
level, once you get above all the caps with FM federal mineral royalties, it's roughly half schools, half general fund. Severance tax, if I'm not mistaken, goes all general fund. So that's the high level overview. We can look at this big A chart, and I failed to bring it with me. I probably should have, but yes, that's in general terms. I'd say FMR is more heavily favor our schools. Severance tax is more general fund. And I imagine that's a discussion that we're going to have. And I just point out we still have that 25% or so that we're keeping right now as the bill stands in FMRs. If there's going to be wiggle room as far as having that discussion, I'd suggest we focus on that.
Okay, and one more question, Mr. Chairman, just generally from a philosophical standpoint, we have struggled to find any additional revenue for the state for at least the past 5 years, if not longer. And for the most part, have repeatedly failed, right? We can probably think of one reasonable new revenue increase and then a few others that might trickle in some additional revenue. This is an implementation of a new revenue stream effectively that's uniform across the country for all practical purposes. Well, not truly, it's uniform across federal lands. And we know that some states have more federal lands than others, but as long as you're operating on federal lands, it's more or less a uniform increase in a royalty rate that then half of that comes back to the state. And even though there's offsets, it's an additional revenue to the state. And I guess I would be comfortable, I'd be more comfortable with this concept of trying to find balance if the legislature were capable of passing additional revenue streams over here while we're trying to balance things in the mineral sector. So what was the discussion on the select committee about? Sure, this would be nice. I mean, that's kind of my feeling. Sure, this would be nice if everything else worked well, but we don't seem to be doing a good job of diversifying our revenue streams. So how can we do this at this point in time? And again, as you pointed out, a lot of this revenue goes to the schools. We're struggling with school funding. So on one hand, we don't know how we're going to meet our long-term obligations on school funding or even in the general fund. But here's legislation that would eliminate a potential additional revenue stream.
Senator Boner, did you get the question?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, and so I say philosophically, I imagine the biggest reason why we haven't had more new revenue streams is because we have a large rainy day fund that just hasn't become necessary just yet. I think that certainly in the Senate, there's a desire for reform in terms of the way we structure a lot of these revenue streams. Personally, on my philosophical perspective, I wish that we would talk more about empowering local municipalities, local school districts to go out and find a level of taxation that is right for their communities and do less micromanagement from the state level. And we've agreed on that before. We have absolutely agreed on that before, Mr. Minority Leader. And so from at least as far as why I'm hesitant to support new revenue streams that go to us in the legislature is because of the lack of reform of the structures that we use to support our local communities. And so I think there's a Senate Joint Resolution 4 last year that would have changed the way we do school capital construction, for example. I think that'd be a good template for my vision for moving the state forward and not micromanaging as much, but providing tools for local elected officials to make decisions that are right for their communities. So until we get that reform in the way that we administer government, me personally, I don't think we need to raise taxes anymore. And I think I've yet to hear a member of the legislature say we need to become more dependent upon our extractive industries for revenue. And this is exactly what this policy would do. So there's that element as well. It's only going to increase the volatility, increase our dependence on these industries. So I don't think we should sit back as the feds make that decision for us. And by the way, I still point out that as the bill stands right now, we're still leaving that 25% of the increase in the FMR account. So there will be still a little bit of increase to our schools. Thanks.
Senator Boner, I maybe misheard your testimony, but I thought you said they did not need to apply, that it'd be automatic, but I'm looking, there's a couple places on page 4 and page 5 that they apply for this refund.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry if I misspoke. That the companies do have to apply. And you can ask them, but that has not been a problem for them. And it'll help our Department of Revenue with the administration significantly.
You
Okay.
spoke correctly, this chairman.
Maybe I wasn't listening correctly. Any other questions for Senator Boner? Any other question? Any other short questions for Senator Boner? Hearing none. Thank you, Senator Boner. Do we have any agencies that would like to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Craig Rendick, Administrator of the Mineral Tax Division for Department of Revenue. Senator Boner spoke pretty eloquently as to, the impact while we come up with 75%. It's basically $1 increase in royalties is $1 decrease in value. How we came up with the 75%, there's a spreadsheet, and we will certainly get that to the committee, and you can play around with the variables. And it's surprising that the volatility of that number really isn't that high, given that severance taxes are basically 6 to 7%, and the mill levies are in a short range. And same thing with, you could mess around with the royalty rate too. So you can get a feel for the volatility. The only other thing really for the department in this bill was we want to set it up as a refund versus a credit, basically just because of the way our system works. Credits get intertwined with the valuation. And if we keep it as a credit that they apply for on a separate form, all they have to do is change the amount of royalty depending upon that royalty rate. And we can create its own module and we can track that much easier. And that's basically what our input on all this was.
I have a question. Do you think that the feds are doing this? Have they already said they're doing this, or are we just preparing for when they do it?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know of any action they've already taken. I think this is just contemplation. And by the same token, we did speak with the Department of Audit about this, and they were of the opinion that the existing royalty rates are by contract, by lease. And so those, they don't believe, unless there's some other legislation that comes along that can be broken. So what we think right now, at least, is that this is only for future production. I don't think it's going to change everything that's already in place.
Okay, Senator Rothfuss, did you have a short question?
Well, I've got 3 long ones, but I'll go with the short one.
Yeah, go with the short one, would you?
Yeah. What are we looking at in terms of the magnitude of the change based on, again, an 18% or 20%? I don't know what royalty you've worked with, and I appreciate seeing the spreadsheet, but can you give us some kind of order of magnitude estimates of the differential between with and without this act in place?
Let me get to that.
That's pretty short.
Yeah, that's better than most.
Fumble, fumble, fumble. On 1 million barrels of oil, price of $65. What we're looking at is a total state the federal royalty and severance tax reduction. You receive an increase in total of about 2,081,000, but this offset, the decrease is 300,000. So on 1 million barrels, we would get an overall increase of 1.774, but a $300,000 decrease. Recognize this adjustment. That's what we're looking at.
The 1.774 made sense to me, but can you go over that $300,000 again? What were you saying that was?
That is the adjustment we're making, that the 75% comes in, the fact that, yes, we're getting more overall, but we're losing 307,000 in severance and ad valorem tax. And that's the 75% of the 2 million gets us to 1.774.
Okay, all right. So just so I understand, Mr. Chairman, $2 million would be the additional royalty,
Correct.
which makes sense. And then 75% of that gets you to the 1.774. That would effectively be the refund.
The net, yes, correct.
And then 300,000 would be the increase to what we would get from the FMRs. But are you saying that would be offset by a differential in the severance? So the state would roughly break even?
Yes, the 307 is what's reflective of the loss of severance and ad valorem tax.
And it's
Yes.
about the same. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Any other questions for revenue? Other questions for revenue? I'm going to have to cut this off again. We'll have to carry this over to Monday. We'll keep the public comment open for Monday. So please come back and give us your comments. Thank you very much for being here.
Y'all come back.
God dang it. can't even get through the public comments.